Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, we are still explaining the well-known book, A Summary of Islamic Jurisprudence, and here we reach to the book of Al-Siyam, fasting, and this is chapter 1. Today we will explain the chapter 1. The author here says, the title of this chapter, chapter 1, Fasting Ramadan, Obligation and Timing. Fasting the month of Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And it's taken for granted to be one of the obligations ordained by Allah. So the Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam according to the authentic hadith and verses and ayahs of Quran. Allah be He exalted said, "All you who have believed, decreed upon you is fasting as it was decreed upon those before you." This is an evidence or a proof that the Ramadan is obligation on every Muslim. It is an obligation on every Muslim, as the author said. And Allah be He exalted said, the month of Ramadan is that in which was revealed the Quran, a guidance for the people and clear proofs of guidance and criterion. So whoever cites the new moon of Ramadan or of the month, let him fast it. Let him fast it means that it's an obligation. And also the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and he mentioned that fasting the month of Ramadan in one of his authentic hadith. And it is a consensus between scholars of Islam that Ramadan is an obligation. So we have the book of Islam, it's Quran, and we read 2 verses from Quran that states that the Ramadan is an obligation on every Muslim. And the hadith of Muhammad ﷺ, he mentioned that Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. The third thing is that the consensus of the Islamic scholars that Ramadan is an obligation. The Prophet here, the author here wants to tell us that what is the wisdom behind the decree of Ramadan. So the divine wisdom, the author says, the divine wisdom behind the decree of fasting is that, number one, he mentioned four points to refer to the wisdom of Ramadan. The first one, he said, it involves purification of the human soul from immorality and vice. You know, we all do sins in our life, and it's something normal for a human being to do or to do some sins during his life. So from Ramadan to Ramadan, when a Muslim fasting the whole month, the 30 days or 29 days, whatever, this fasting is a purification for us from the sins that we committed during the previous year. For fasting blocks the evil ways of Satan, as Satan circulates in one's body. Just like the circulation of the blood. And this is taken from a prophetic hadith that the Prophet Muhammad said that Satan is in our body, he circulates in our body just like the circulation of the blood. And this doesn't mean that we are possessed by Satan, but this is something different that Prophet Muhammad said, the Satan affect the Muslim and the humans, and you have to make some things that prevent the devil or the Satan prevent him from controlling us and our acts. Therefore, one of these things, all in all, good deeds we do in our life, it controls the Satan. And Ramadan here, the author says, according to the prophetic hadith, that Ramadan is one of the ways that we control the Satan. Number two, whenever one eats and or drinks, one's soul becomes vulnerable to succumb to one's desire. It will weaken, and one becomes more reluctant toward worship, which will not be the case when one is in a state of fasting. So, when you fast, you will feel some specific spiritual change in your soul, that you will feel you can do the worship more than when you are eating and drinking, because eating and drinking prevents, sometimes it's something like obstacle for us from doing some obligations. Therefore Ramadan here make it so easy for us to do the obligations and worships. You feel some compassionate in your heart, and other benefits. Only those who do the fasting of Ramadan, they can feel this thing. But maybe some people say, oh, I don't feel these things, I don't feel that I can control myself in Ramadan from doing sins. We tell him that you need to revise your fasting. Some people, as the Prophet Muhammad said, that they stop eating and drinking and they are not fasting. They just only bring hardship for themselves, but in fact they are not fasting. Allah will not accept their fasting because they are doing sins, they are backbiting, these things. So therefore we're saying that these feelings you will feel once you perform the fasting the way that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and first Allah He exalted and Muhammad ﷺ informed us to do. Number three, moreover, fasting induces the renunciation of worldly pleasures and personal desires and draws a Muslim's attention to the hereafter. Number four, furthermore, fasting makes one sympathize with the poor and needy people, because when you feel the hunger, the hardship of the Ramadan, you will feel with those poor people, those people in need, those people who can't find the food. This will affect your feelings, this will make you feel with the hardship that they live in their lives and all the months of the year, and that will make you or push you to help them or to make charity for them, and also it will make you thank Allah for His blessings for you, because no one knows that you would be one of them one day. So thank Allah that you're not one of them, so as the blessings of Allah on you continues by your thanks to God, Allah be He exalted. Here he wants to define the fasting. Here he wants to define the fasting according to the Sharia. Sharia, it means Islamic law. Fasting means abstaining from certain acts. In fact, this is the definition of fasting. So the author here says fasting means abstaining from certain acts. What are these acts? These acts are eating, number one, eating, drinking, and having the sexual intercourse with one's spouse. Committing immoralities, these things, committing immoralities, sins, and all other acts a fasting person is prohibited to do as said. These things that the author said, some of these things will revoke or invalidate your fasting, like eating, drinking, having sexual intercourse. These three things will invalidate your fasting. Otherwise, other things that he said that it prohibits yourself or preventing yourself from committing immoralities, sins, other things, these might lessen the rewards or the good deeds that you get through your fasting. Now he wants to talk about the timing of fasting. The timing of fasting. The prescribed time of daily fasting begins from the daybreak from the daybreak, that is Fajr time. Once you hear as for those who are living in cities, most of us are living in cities, so we can't recognize whether the Fajr or the dawn is there or not unless we hear the Adhan, which is the prayer call of Fajr. And for those who don't have Adhan in some Western countries, they depend on their watches and clocks. So they can know the Fajr time according to the calendars they have, the lunar calendars they have, and so they can stop eating once the time is due of the Fajr prayer. Namely, the manifest, or let us repeat this phrase, the prescribed time for daily fasting begins from daybreak, namely the manifest whiteness in the horizon, the whiteness of light in the horizon. Those people who are living in deserts or open spaces, wide open spaces, they can see the horizon from the south and from east and west. They can see the sunset and they can see the sunrise, and they can see the whiteness or the white thread, which is mentioned in the Quran. They can see this one and they can say that this is the time of fasting, or this is the time of prayer call or Fajr prayer. As for us, as I said before, that we live in cities, so we cannot see these things. We cannot see the sunset, the exact sunset. We cannot see the whiteness of the daybreak. So therefore, we have to depend on the prayer call or depend on the lunar calendars that we have in this regard. Manifest whiteness in the horizon and ends at the time of sunset. Allah exalted be He says, so now have relations with them, your wives, and seek that which Allah has decreed for you, offspring, and eat and drink until the white thread of dawn becomes distinct to you from the black thread of night. Then complete the fast until the night sunset. Then complete the fast until the night, which is sunset. The phrase, the white thread of dawn becomes distinct to you from the black thread of night, shows that fasting begins when the whiteness of the daybreak becomes distinct from the blackness of the night. Now we talked about the definition of Ramadan. We talked about the timing of fasting, daily timing, and now we will talk about the timing of Ramadan, when it comes and when it goes, or when Ramadan finishes. The obligatory time of fasting the month of Ramadan begins when the beginning of the month is known. So, now how can we know that Ramadan has started? There are three ways, that the author says, three ways by which one can know about the beginning of this month. The first one, seeing the new moon of the month. And also the new moon of the month, the people of the city, sometimes they cannot see the moon in the first day of the month. Therefore, we depend on those people who live in deserts or wide open spaces. They can see They can see the moon at the first day of the lunar month. So Allah exalted be He says, so whoever sights the new moon of the month, let him fast it. That means if you live in a desert or wide open space and you see the moon on the first day of Ramadan, you have to fast yourself. Even the country that you live in, they did not see that one. But you don't say that I'm fasting, this is Ramadan, and so and so. This depends on you, yourself. You saw Ramadan. You saw the moon of Ramadan, the crescent of Ramadan. So you can fast, or you have to fast because you saw it. But if the area you live in, they said that this is not Ramadan, you have to fast Ramadan yourself. start fasting on seeing it. The Prophet Muhammad started fasting on seeing it, the new moon of Ramadan, seeing the new moon of Ramadan. Thus whoever sees, the author here says, thus whoever sees the new moon of the month of Ramadan by himself is obliged to fast it. Is obliged to fast it. The second point that we recognize that the Ramadan is started or begun, being informed of the appearance of the new moon, the crescent of the month, by a just, trustworthy, legally accountable person. A just, trustworthy, legally accountable person comes and say, I saw the crescent of Ramadan, so we have to believe him and start or commence fasting Ramadan. Why? Because the Prophet Muhammad, the people were looking for the new moon of Ramadan when I informed Allah's Messenger, peace and blessing be upon him, that I had sighted it. He, peace and blessing be upon him, observed fasting and commanded the people to fast. That means to fast Ramadan. The Prophet Muhammad commanded the nation of Islam to fast Ramadan according to the information that one of his companions, according to the information that one of his companions conveyed to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The third point, the completion of the month of Sha'ban. So you know that the lunar month is either 29 days or 30 days. So if Sha'ban is the 30 days, that means definitely after that Ramadan will come. And this sometimes happens when we have clouds in the sky and we cannot see the crescent of Ramadan, so we have to complete the count of Sha'ban for 30 days. Then afterwards we start the Ramadan month. As the author here says, this is the completion of the month of Sha'ban, the month preceding Ramadan. Sha'ban is the month preceding Ramadan, as 30 days. This way is to be applied when the new moon is invisible on the 13th night of Sha'ban, though there is nothing to block vision, such as clouds, rain, or the like. In this regard, the Prophet Muhammad said the lunar month can be 29 nights or days, so do not fast until you see the new moon, and do not break fasting until you see it. And if the sky is overcast, then you have to estimate the period. What's the meaning of that? You have to estimate the period. That means to complete Sha'ban as 30 days. So if you have overcast, you cannot see the moon of Ramadan, the crescent of Ramadan. Therefore, you have to finish the Sha'ban month, which is 30 days. Afterwards, you will be sure that this day, after the 30 days, that you will be sure that the next day is the first day of Ramadan, and start fasting. This is confirmed by the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, and if the sky is overcast and you cannot see the new moon, complete Sha'ban as 30 days. Complete Sha'ban as 30 days. Fasting the month of Ramadan is obligatory upon every legally accountable Muslim. It is, as we said before, it is an obligation upon every legally accountable Muslim. Accountable Muslim, that Muslim, because it's not obligation on kids. So till a Muslim reaches the puberty age, so he has to start fasting Ramadan. So a disbeliever is not obligated also. A disbeliever is not obligated to observe fasting, and if he does, it will not be accepted from him. However, if a disbeliever repents and converts to Islam during the month of Ramadan, he is to fast the rest of the month, and he doesn't need to perform or to fast the missing days. As the author here said, it's without being obligated to make up for the days he has missed as a disbeliever. Moreover, fasting Ramadan is not obligatory upon children, as we said before, yet it's valid if observed by a discriminating child, and it will be regarded as a voluntary fasting. So we have children very in the very or early years, from 1 to 3 or to 4 years. Those will not fast surely, for sure. But when the child reaches to the discrimination age, and he can do the fasting, for example, if he can do this, and we will not oblige him to do this, but if he wants and he did it, no problem with that, he will be rewarded as a voluntary fasting, as he's doing a voluntary fasting, and his parents will get if they let him fast for this and for the practice, because when they want him to practice for fasting Ramadan, because once he becomes a mature man or a mature woman, he will find it easy to fast Ramadan. So they will get rewarded also, inshallah, for this, and the rewards for this one is as a voluntary fast. Says furthermore, fasting Ramadan is not obligatory upon the insane, and if a person observes it while being in the state of insanity, it will be void due to the lack of intention. So, because the intention is the most important thing in all our worships. Also, this applies for fasting Ramadan. So, if you don't have the intention for fasting Ramadan, I will talk about this part of the intention. If you don't have the intention for fasting Ramadan, that means your fasting is not valid. So here the author says, in the state of insanity, it will be void due to the lack of intention. In addition, fasting Ramadan at its prescribed time is neither obligatory upon one afflicted with an illness, preventing him from observing it, nor upon the one on a journey. So it's recommended for those who have illness that will not afflict them from fasting Ramadan. If you can do it, that will not affect you or harm you, fast Ramadan on its time. But if your illness that prevents you from fasting Ramadan, or if you will get more harm if you fast Ramadan, according to the trustworthy Muslim doctor, he told you that if you fast Ramadan, you will get worse. You will get worse. So don't fast. And this is mentioned in the Quran and prophetic hadith. Both are to make up for it when the legal excuse, illness or traveling, is over. For Allah exaltedly, He says, so whoever among you is ill or not on a journey during them, then an equal number of days are to be made up. An equal number of days are to be made up. So if you are traveling from a place to place, if you are ill, you can break your fast, or you can even not fast that day. And how many days you left from Ramadan? 2, 3, 4 days. An equal number of days are to be made up during the year before the next Ramadan starts or begins. These things doesn't depend on hardship during the travel, because many people, they say that now we are traveling from country to another country within a few minutes, half an hour or 2 hours, and we don't feel the hardship because we are using airplanes or so on and so on. We say that the Prophet Muhammad, Allah be exalted, said that these things is not because of the hardship, it's because the reason is because of the travel itself. So we don't depend on the hardship that we have during our travel. No, travel itself is an excuse for us to break our fast. Travel itself is an excuse for us to break our fast. It doesn't depend on the hardship we find or we see in our travel. The author said the obligation of fasting is directed to both residents and travelers, healthy and ill people, ritually pure or impure people such as menstruating women and women in postnatal bleeding period, and those in a state of unconsciousness. All of them are accountable for the obligation of fasting. What does that mean? That means we are all obliged to fast Ramadan, whether it's on its due time or afterwards in another days during the year. We are all obliged to fast Ramadan. If we have an excuse, that doesn't mean we leave fasting Ramadan at all. No, we fast Ramadan on its due time. If we have a legal excuse, we can fast these days and other days during the year. This is the meaning of what the author says. All of them are accountable for the obligation of fasting. They are commanded to observe it so as to be aware that it's obligatory upon them and that it has to be observed whether at its due time or later, in the case of a legal excuse, as we said. It's obligatory upon some of them to perform it at its prescribed time, namely healthy and resident people. Healthy and resident people, they have to do it. Otherwise, they will get sins. If you don't have a legal excuse, it's not lawful for you, it's not permissible for you to break your fast. You have to fast it since it's an obligation, and we said that who leaves the obligation, he will get sins. For legal excuses, like illness, as we said, like illness, like traveling, like menstruating women have menses, the monthly period, and women in a state of postnatal bleeding. These people are in a legal or they have a legal excuse, therefore they can break their fasting, and they can also make up these days, equal days, during the year, but before the next Ramadan begins. And so the author here says, others are only obliged to make up for it later, namely menstruating women and women in the state of postnatal bleeding, and those who are too ill to observe it at its due time and can observe it later. However, there are some who may choose either whether to observe it at its prescribed time or later, such as travelers and ill people who can observe fasting with difficulty but without causing them harm. As I said before, that people who are traveling, it's not an obligation for them to break their fast. No, if they can fast, no problem. At this case, we're saying that at this case of traveling, of illness, they can break their fast and make it up on other days during the year. But if they want to fast, no problem if this will not affect them or brings or causing them harm. And so this will. So in these cases, these two cases, traveling and illness, these two cases only. We're not talking about women in a monthly period or postnatal bleeding. These cases, the woman is forbidden to fast. If she do this, she will get sins because Allah prohibited fasting for the women in such cases. But we're talking about these two cases, which is illness and traveling. If you will be in the choice, you can choose fasting or you can choose not fasting, but don't harm yourself. As for one who breaks fasting during Ramadan due to a legal excuse and then the excuse is over, such as a traveler who returns back, a menstruating woman or a woman in a state of postnatal bleeding who becomes ritually pure, a disbeliever who converts to Islam, an insane person who regains sanity, and a child who reaches puberty. They are to observe fasting for the rest of that day. So now he's counting a bunch of people who have the excuse for breaking the fast, or they are obliged to break their fast. Like these, the traveler, he said, menstruating women, women in a state of postnatal bleeding, ritually, a disbeliever who converts to Islam, insane person who regains sanity, and child who reaches the puberty. All these people, they have the excuse, the legal excuse, to break their fast or to not fast in the beginning. So, if we suppose that those excuses finished during the day of Ramadan, the author here says that they are to observe fasting for the rest of the day. Means, if the excuse is over in the daytime and to make up for that day afterwards, that means if the sunset on 6 p.m., for example, at 6 p.m., and the monthly period of a woman stopped at 3 p.m., or the child reached the puberty at 3 p.m., or the traveler came back to his country at 3 p.m., for example. That means that there is 3 hours left for the fasting. So the author here says that, and this is one of the scholars' opinion, like Hanbali madhab, they say that he has to fast these 3 hours, the rest of the fasting day. Fast these 3 hours. However, if he fasts these 3 hours, will not count it as a day of fasting. All in all, he needs to fast this day. But some people say that it's for the sacredness or sanctity of the month. He has to stop because of stop eating, drinking, having sexual intercourse because of the sanctity or the sacredness of the month or of the day of Ramadan. So they stop these 3 hours, for example, and this day is void, and they have to make up this day after Ramadan, during the year. Here we can say that other scholars and other madhabs said that you need to stop eating, drinking, all these things in public, because for the same reason, for the sacredness of the day, for the sacredness of the month. So some people, if they see you eating and drinking publicly, they may think something bad of you. They think that you are doing sins, you are leaving the obligation of Allah. They say that he is not fasting Ramadan. They don't know that he came from a travel. You just came from a travel, or this kid just reached the puberty, and these things and such things. So therefore, you need to stop eat and drink publicly, and it's not a sin for you if you eat in your house, for example, where there is no one knows about you. And the same reason, they said that is for the sacredness of the month, or the sacredness of the day. Therefore, we have these two opinions. Both of them, they say stop eating and drinking, but the first opinion, they say that you are obliged to stop eating and drinking for the rest of the day, and if you do this even publicly, either publicly or secretly with yourself, you will get sins. The other point, or the other opinion, they said no, stop eating and drinking publicly only, for the same reason, the sacredness of this month or this day, and you can eat secretly with yourself because you are not asked to fast this day because you had the excuse at the beginning of this day. Up to here, we reach to the end of this lesson, and I hope that you get good information for fasting Ramadan and benefited from this lesson. And inshallah, we'll continue the book of fasting for the next coming lessons. This is your host Omar Al-Khalidy. Thank you very much for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.